getting colder.
Somebody once told me the world is going rainy. I think the chocolate's too
Wait a minute.
She was looking kinda dumb with her finger and her thumb and the shape of you know on her forehead. Well, you start telling if you don't stop telling, dead to the rules and all the
Recent Mortal Kombat games have a big problem, along with the Injustice games. And worst of all, this problem is invisible. That's right, players have been dealing with this problem for decades, but can't even see it. NetherRealm games handle combat much differently than other fighting games, and that needs to change. So today's video is shining a spotlight on this hidden issue, because the next game needs to fix this, whether it's Injustice 3, Mortal Kombat 13, or even Mortal Kombat vs. DC 2, doesn't matter. If this problem continues for the next game, then we all suffer. So please leave a like down below to help this video get shared around on YouTube, and of course posting on social media yourself also helps out a ton too. Fair warning, today's video will get nerdy, but it's also super interesting. What you're seeing on screen right now is known as a hurt box. There's the character and then the rectangle that you can actually hit. That's why it's called a hurt box. If you want to actually hurt the opponent, you must hit this box, not the character's actual body. That doesn't matter at all. In fact, the game has no clue the body's even there. If the hurt box went away, then you'd be unable to ever hit the opponent, because that's what the game is looking for. Then you have the hitbox, which is the red rectangle on screen, and the game uses this to actually hit the other player. So the hurt box is what can be hit, and the hitbox is what's actually doing the hitting. Are you with me so far? Fantastic, you're doing great. Nearly every fighting game on planet Earth uses hitboxes and hurtboxes, because they started with pixels. There were no polygons back then, and the pixels were literally just artwork for you to look at. They had no way of interacting with each other. In other words, the game itself can't look at pixel art and tell what's happening. It needs triggers, otherwise known as hitboxes and hurtboxes. Every time your character throws a punch or a kick, the game uses hitboxes to tell what's happening. If the hitbox overlaps a hurtbox, then the opponent gets hit and takes damage. However, if the hitbox misses and never interacts with the hurtbox, then nobody takes damage. And even though video games have changed quite a lot with upgrades to technology, and now almost everything is done with polygons instead of pixel art, fighting games have remained the same because it's very effective. And also, it's easy to update. If an attack is hitting when it should not, the developers can just edit the hitbox to make more sense. Or sometimes an attack is too good with just too much range, and developers will shorten the hitbox a bit. You get the idea. And one final thing worth noting is that every character tends to have the same hurtbox, because that's fair. Even if one character is slightly taller or slumping their posture a bit, their hurtboxes tend to be the same for gameplay balance reasons. However, there are some exceptions if one character is way too big or another character is much smaller. Of course, their hurtboxes will be different, but for the most part, there's an average hurtbox size for every character. And as the player, you're never able to see any of this during regular gameplay, but it's always working behind the scenes to make sure your game is good. Except for NetherRealm games, because they don't have these. That's right, NetherRealm fighting games are the only ones without hurtboxes and hitboxes, and it's a big issue. Instead, NetherRealm games use what's called mesh colliders, which are essentially polygons to keep things simple, and I'm sure most of you watching know what polygons are, but in case you don't, it's the tiny shapes that make up every single character in 3D space. They're usually rectangles or triangles, otherwise known as tris, and they make up every 3D character in any game ever. That's what polygons are, and mesh colliders are when you take polygons and make them the literal triggers. That's how NetherRealm games do it, so as mentioned earlier, there's no hurtboxes and hitboxes to keep things universal and understandable. Instead, everything's wonky, because now the character's animations decide if they can be hit or not. Shiva from Mortal Kombat 9 is the best example. She has an overhead, which is meant to catch the opponent off guard and can do lots of damage if you mix them up correctly. As you can see, poor Striker here was caught crouching and is now eating tons of damage. Everything is working as it should, because overheads are meant to hit crouching opponents. That's the entire point of an overhead. It punishes people for crouching. But then we have Kitana, who just can't be hit by this overhead. Even though she is crouching, doesn't matter. The attack is missing. And if you're wondering why, it's because Kitana's crouch is just a bit too low. The Shiva attack is missing because the polygons aren't overlapping. In other fighting games, this would never happen because the hurtboxes are universal. But in NetherRealm games, your character's crouch animation can save them from attacks and just make them immune to certain moves, which is unintentional and terrible game balance that has persisted across all of the games. Mortal Kombat 11 had this, and Mortal Kombat 1 even has this still. It's been reduced over the years, don't get me wrong, but it never would have happened if NetherRealm just used hitboxes and hurtboxes like every other fighting game studio does. One of the big reasons why Shiva was a low tier in MK9 was the mesh colliders. Any character who crouched lower than average was immune to Shiva's overhead. They could avoid it for free, which completely removed the mix-up and made Shiva garbage. But as mentioned earlier, it's not just MK9. MK11 had this issue as well. Johnny Cage had a projectile that was plus on block, which allowed him to pressure the opponent, and was a big deal because Johnny Cage didn't have any mix-ups, no overheads or lows to scare the opponent. Instead, he had pressure. But guess what? Literally every woman in the game could duck under his fireballs. That's right, they're not supposed to be able to, but they could because their crouch animation was lower. Because the women in Mortal Kombat games have smaller bodies, they can duck under moves they're not supposed to. Along with Raiden too, which is funny. He's not smaller, but his crouch animation is lower, which allowed him to avoid these fireballs too, with a couple other men on the roster as well. Another great example is Katana. She had mid attacks that would be ducked under by the opponent. For anyone watching not aware, mid attacks are not supposed to be duckable. That's the entire point. That's why they're called mids. None of which was intentional, and I have to emphasize that. NetherRealm did not do this on purpose. It's an oversight that happens from not using hurt boxes and hitboxes. Which might have you wondering why NetherRealm does this when it causes so many problems. The sad answer is time. Creating hurt boxes and hitboxes actually takes effort. It's gotta be done separately for each character. Game developers will spend hours making sure the hitboxes and hurt boxes interact correctly, and NetherRealm doesn't want to waste time on that, so instead they make the polygons a trigger, otherwise known as mesh colliders, which is just one click of the mouse. And I'm not joking, it's one click. I know that because I worked in game design for 8 years. Turning polygons into mesh colliders is super easy, but also causes many problems and also makes the game run slower too. Because hitboxes and hurtboxes are just rectangles and there's not too many of them, so the game has no problem keeping track. Whereas mesh colliders are the opposite because characters are covered in polygons, there's tons of them. For a quick comparison, count the number of rectangles over here and then count the rectangles over here. Do you see the difference? There's so many benefits to using hurtboxes and hitboxes instead of mesh colliders, but NetherRealm won't do that because they're lazy or just don't have the time. I'm not sure which one. Maybe their producers and people above them are crunching way too hard, but regardless, the end result is the same. Every NetherRealm game has wonky interactions with these mesh colliders. Attacks hitting from the back or moves punching right through people. Sometimes there's overheads that can be crouched under. That was infamous in Mortal Kombat 1. Sikander himself, a tournament player, went viral after reacting to this clip where his overhead missed on a crouching opponent. That's right, just like Shiva in Mortal Kombat 9, this issue is still a thing in 2025. I have no doubt that every one of you watching right now who's played Mortal Kombat has experienced this issue. You've been hit by a move that should never have landed, or you've dodged a move that rightfully should have hit you. All of which occurred because NetherRealm refuses to use hurtboxes and hitboxes, even though in the long run they actually take less time. Because updating a hitbox is super easy, but tweaking mesh colliders takes forever, so every single update where NetherRealm tries to tweak an attack is gonna take longer when they could have taken the extra time before the game was out to just use hurtboxes instead and save way more time. In other words, mesh colliders only save time at the beginning when you want to get the game released because it's one mouse click, but then later when you want to update the attacks to actually work correctly, it takes way more time. Which is why if any NetherRealm employee is watching this video, I'm begging you for the next game, please abandon mesh colliders and just use hurtboxes and hitboxes like every other fighting game studio does. You haven't discovered some magic shortcut with mesh colliders. The other developers know that exists, they just don't use it because it's so wacky and inconsistent and just overall unreliable. Alright everyone, there you have it. The invisible problem that is plaguing every single NetherRealm game, Mortal Kombat 9 all the way to Mortal Kombat 1 and the Injustice games in between. As mentioned earlier, please leave a like on this video, it helps the algorithm a lot. Leave a comment down below as well and share on social media if you have the time. Because we seriously need NetherRealm to change this for the next game. No more mesh colliders, alright? Just good old-fashioned hitboxes and hurtboxes. They work the best and they've been around forever. And that's because when something works, you don't change it. You can't fix what's not broken. Thanks for watching everyone, I hope you enjoyed. Next up, I recommend this video. It's very entertaining and covers the best roster for Mortal Kombat vs DC 2. So go on and click it. What are you waiting for? Click this video right now, it's super entertaining, you're gonna love it. And also, check out this new mug from GamerSupps. Looks pretty cool, right? How about this new shaker? Looks pretty awesome too, right? Oh, and check out this awesome mousepad. GamerSupps has some really cool stuff. And using my link down below gets you 10% off any purchase, and every purchase you make supports my channel directly. That's right, in other words, it's an absolute win. GamerSupps has so much awesome stuff to buy, buy, and there's never been a better time to check out their website. They even have new shops in Europe and Australia, which means they deliver to you faster and for much cheaper, assuming you live outside the US, which I know many of you watching do. Which is why there's never been a better time to check out Gamersubs. They support channels and gamers like myself, so please give their website a look. There's so much cool stuff there.